All right, and we're recording. So, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our Little Hope Creek Improvement Project Phase 3 virtual meeting. My name is Janelle Poole. I am going to keep my camera off for this meeting so you guys can focus on the information that we're sharing and also see our wonderful project manager, Will Rice. So just to kind of, again, do some housekeeping, we have a brief presentation with just a few slides, and then at the end of the slides, we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please look at the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen and type your questions in there, and I'll be sure to facilitate that Q&A session at the end. So we'll start out with the agenda. Also want to let you guys know that I am recording this, so we will put it on the project website after we finish today's meeting. So we'll start out with a welcome, which is me. Hello, welcome. We'll introduce the project team. We'll go over the project overview, talk about construction timelines, talk about the progress that has happened already, and then go into some more details about the construction work that's getting done and the timeline. And then again, like I said, we'll open it up for Q&A. I'm letting someone in. So again, as I said, my name is Janelle Poole. I'm with Charlotte Water's communication team. So we also want to welcome Will Rice, who is the project manager for this project. Some of you may be familiar with Stephen Scott. He was a previous project manager on the first two phases. So very excited that Will is joining us to work out the end of the project. Also with us, we have our contractors with Park Construction, who's Austin Bailey and Bobby Rayner. And then our engineering partners, which is Black and Beach Engineering, which is Mike Osborne, Preston Johnson, Riley Howell, and Keith Hunter. Also, Leah Crosby is our real estate person with Gulf Coast Real Estate. And then our wonderful communication team with Shernoff Newman, which is Amanda DeWise and Katie Brewer. So with that, I'll go and turn it over to Will Rice to talk us through the project overview. Well, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hello, I'm back.
Can hear you now. All right, go ahead.
Is my turn? Okay. Sorry about that. I missed the intro. Got kicked off, but I'm back. Okay, so hi, my name is Will. I've met some of you before. I'm keeping my video off. I think maybe I have bandwidth problems with video, so video off. I've met some of y'all before, and we'll probably be meeting in the future. Just real quick overview of the Little Hope Creek project in general. The original sewer in this area was built in the 1950s and 1960s, so it is antique condition, very old sewer. We also are experiencing large amounts of groundwater and stormwater coming into this pipeline. So we call that inflow and infiltration, or I&I. So when it rains, we get a bunch of extra water come into the pipe to mix with the sewer that we don't necessarily need and should not be getting into the pipe. So it needs to be replaced because of that as well. And then also the pipe is just undersized at this point because of the amount of rain and groundwater and sewer. And so we do have some overflow problems in parts of this basin. So really this project is going to sort of solve a lot of issues. And so that's why we're doing it. It's got multiple benefits. Next slide. These are some pictures of other parts of this project. It's a 3-phase project, so phases 1 and 2 are complete. And these are some of the examples of manholes that have been replaced. And you can see, obviously, water will flow into the manhole on the left there. You see cracks in that manhole on the right. And then the one in the middle there, you can kind of see these, some of these manholes were built brick by brick back in the 50s and 60s when the sewer was originally created. And so that is antiquated technology. We do not build manholes brick by brick anymore. They come cast concrete, much better for longevity and keeping sewer in the sewer where it's supposed to be. So we're going to be replacing all these manholes that are still brick and still out in the system. Next slide. Project goals, basically just solving the problems that we've listed already. So, taking an old system that's undersized, that gets used too much, and upsizing it and making it new so it will last a lot longer. Keep dirty water inside of our sewer pipes where they can go down to the treatment plant, and we can clean that water, keep the sewer in the sewer, essentially, basically. This is going to benefit Little Hope Creek, and it will, benefit the surrounding areas as well. Next slide. So here's a good map showing the Little Hope Creek sewer basin. So, if you were to turn this map a little bit, assuming South Boulevard ran north-south and Park Road ran north-south, essentially this is everything between Park and South Boulevard. So east of South Boulevard, west of Park Road, and north of Tyvola. All the wastewater in this area flows downhill to the treatment plant right there at the corner of Park Road and Tyvola. And this basin is kind of nice. We actually have a good amount of topography, so we're able just to have gravity have that water flow downhill without having to do any pumping whatsoever. So literally all the water leaves y'all's houses, and it just flows downhill until it gets to Park and Tyvola at our treatment plant, where we make it clean again. So phase 1 and 2 are the light gray and the dark gray. Those are completed. We are now in the phase 3 section. And phase 3 has 3 subsections. So you see 3A, 3B, and 3C. And then the more specifically, the phase that we're really talking, the phase and subphase we're talking about tonight is what's in red there. So that's sort of the first half of 3A. It's from the existing new sewer over on Mockingbird, I believe, and it goes up to Woodlawn, and then we are going to go ahead and do a tunnel bore under Woodlawn as well, and then this subphase and just on the other side of Woodlawn. Next slide. Overall, the project started back in 2021. 17,000 feet of pipe have been installed to date. And again, a lot of that pipe was 8-inch, 24-inch, and very, very old. And we're going to upsize it to 12-inch and or up to 36-inch. And this is a nice picture. So that beautiful sort of green-blue color pipe that's C900 PVC. That's what we're putting in the ground. And then, as I just mentioned, we're in the third phase of sort of the 3 phases. This is what it will look like typically in our easement. You can see the black silt fence. It keeps back silt on the left side there. And then you can also see a temporary fence on the right side there. And you can see they're working in and around. You can see that they're working in and around some power poles, some other infrastructure. Essentially, they're going to, the way it works is they dig enough to put a single section of pipe in. They put the section of pipe in, they connect it to the previously installed pipe, and then they backfill and they kind of move those 2 excavators down one section and kind of install that pipe one piece at a time. Next slide. So again, I mentioned that this sort of reddish is the part that we're talking about tonight. And in terms of that section, we've done all of our land surveying, and we've done some underground utility marking. We've done flow metering, and some of you may have seen recently we did some geotechnical down there at Marion Deal on a different section, but we've already done it on this section as well to see where the rock is. We've done some video inspection of the old pipe. There's basically been a lot of groundwork laid to ensure that we know, we have good justification for doing the project. And so that's what we did a lot of assessment on the other line, did a lot of monitoring, figured out how much water we need to have once we're done with the project, and decided, the design for this project as well to get ready to actually do the construction. And then, of course, the last piece is, once we know where the line is, we go out to all y'all homeowners and try to get easements, and then that way we have a place where we can put that pipe on the ground. Next slide. Easement acquisition, we're really close to being done with that. I think there's a handful of people left that we're still sort of in negotiation with and talking to, but for the most part, that's really close to being done. We're hoping to wrap up for the end of the year with easement acquisition. Next slide. This is a really cool diagram to sort of, again, show sort of how it works. And for a lot of y'all, you can go out back and it's kind of in the forest or it's in the dense growth where the current pipe is. You can kind of find manholes if you look really hard, but for the most part, the existing sewer is really close to the creek. We're going to come back a little bit further away from the creek, and because we have to dig a little bit deeper. The deeper you go, the more space you need. It's kind of a maroon, not maroon, kind of the darker shaded area is what we kind of need area wise to make that excavation. And then I want to point out, you can kind of you'll know where the project is and progression depending on where the trench box is. So this little device that we have called a trench box that allows utility workers to safely be down in an excavation as they're installing that pipe. And so the trench box will be, sort of at the point of current pipe installation, and you'll slowly see it move top of the hill. I'm sorry, bottom of the hill up, and that's where the project will be. Oftentimes people ask, the difference between, we go back one slide, people will ask, what's the difference between a permanent easement and a temporary easement? And so the temporary easement really is, you could think of it sort of it's extra space to allow us to have our equipment in there moving around. Once we're done installing the actual pipe, of course, we won't need that space anymore. So it goes back to y'all, the homeowners, but we do still need the permanent easement. And the permanent easement is, in the event that we do have to do a repair, we need that space. We can come in and do the repair. And repairs typically don't require as much width. So that's why permanent easement is less than the permanent plus the temporary. I hope that makes sense. Definitely feel free to ask more questions. I did a previous little video about easements as well, hoping to help explain it. I know it's a complicated idea. So feel free to ask me about that later when I see you in person and get to meet you in the field. Next, I think we're going to have Austin talk a little bit about construction and about what y'all might see.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Austin Bailey. I will be the project manager for Park Construction on this project. I'm going to go ahead to the next slide. We're going to be starting our construction timeline in early November. You'll be seeing surveyors coming out and marking what is called the LOD, or limits of disturbance. They'll be flagging that, and then following that operation, you'll be seeing clearing activities begin with tree removal, things like that. Go ahead and next slide. And so there's a handful of construction activities that are going to go on with this. Of course, the clearing will start. This will also include, you'll see equipment deliveries coming in. They'll be getting those excavators Will talked about earlier. You'll see equipment like that getting demobbed or mobilized into the easements off of trucks. You'll see connex boxes, supplies, our actual pipes and manholes coming to the job site as we need to get the material. You'll see erosion control, safety areas established with orange safety fence and temporary fence measures. Some traffic control measures may be implemented during some of the project, depending on where we are. Those will be well delineated for everyone to know. Trench digging will occur once they get done with the clearing and the identification of any rock. Blasting will be based upon how much drilling we find rock to be. Now we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute, and then the trench line will keep on going on from there. And then the construction of all our traffic is, of course, going to stay within our limits of disturbance or within those temporary and permanent easements. We'll keep all the construction activity contained into that, and there won't be any sort of intrusion onto private property. We keep our construction activity tight. Next slide. Clearing activities, basically what you'll see is, like I've talked about earlier, is the surveyors will come through and you'll see some flags being hung on the tree line. These are going to delineate the kind of boundaries of our clearing operations. You'll see, like I say, markers and ribbons. They'll be coming through to remove trees, bushes, shrubs, anything that's within the LOD. This could include fencing, this can include sheds. Any item that is in that easement area will be moved so the pipeline construction can happen quickly and efficiently. Let's go on the next slide. Will, want to get your input here on the blasting.
I think Will is having connection issues. I think I'm looking to see if he was able to call in.
Not a problem. Um,
Keep going, thank you.
Yeah, just a quick synopsis here. What is blasting? Everybody tends to think sometimes when you hear blasting, you think of the movies. It's definitely not the case. This is small, controlled shots used to remove rock that is underground, and it is broken up so that we can excavate and install the pipeline. During this process, we maintain seismograph monitors in the area of blasting. These monitor ground vibrations to make sure that we're staying within the prescribed limits that blasting is allowed to be performed at due to industry standards. And before we blast, there will be an entire session of pre-blast surveys for those that will be affected by this. And then if anyone requests at the end of the project, as we go through, post-blast survey can be requested as well. But that again, most people think this is a large explosion or something like that. It is not. It is a very controlled, very small action that happens, and it is well monitored and well regulated when we do this operation. Next slide. Mobilization and site preparation. These are just some examples of what the operation can look like. You'll see the black silt fence will come after the clearing operation. Crews will come through with smaller equipment and hand tools and we'll get this installed. As Will was saying earlier, this is to prevent any sort of silt or erosion from leaving the job site and possibly entering the creek. On the other side, you'll see temporary fencing, orange safety fencing, things like that going in to help delineate the exact area of our LOD, our limits of disturbance, so that we, our guys, our construction crews know where our limits are. And as it says, there'll be a large enough zone that this easement will be wide enough for excavators and dump trucks and haulers and things like that that we need to complete the operation, be able to move around in that easement. Next slide. So during active construction, there's going to be two types of construction. One of these is the pipeline that is in the road, and you can see an example of that in the photo on the left-hand side, where we're staying in the boundaries of the street. Again, on this will be where you may see some traffic control. You may see some detours around certain areas. There may be small temporary detours to get traffic around as it's through traffic, but local traffic will always be able to get you in and out of your houses. There won't be any impediment to keeping someone from getting in and out, or emergency vehicles or something like that. Our site staff is very conscientious of that and stays on top of that really well. And then, of course, manholes, they vary in size. What you see at the top that's just a ring and cover may get very big underground. In this case, we're doing a range of sizes, starting with some 24-inch, so they won't be too big. But you'll see precast concrete structures that they're box-looking pieces and some round-looking pieces made of concrete that will be above ground right before they go into install. Those are just our manholes that we'll put together kind of like Legos in a way on site, and we'll be burying those along with the pipeline. Next slide. And then finally, construction and restoration. Once you see the pipeline system come through and the construction team is getting that installed, we'll follow that up with a restoration phase. And that crew will come through and we will seed and straw and get the easements back to their pre-existing conditions before we were there. And our best goal is to get a good stand of stabilization and be able to get out of that easement like we left it and clean back up. So, and at the end of that, you may see some silt fence remaining for a time, and that's just until we can get a good stand of grass on the easement to where we can pull that silt fence out. All right, next slide. And I'll turn that back over to Ajanelle for closing this out.
Thank you, Austin. So if you, again, want to see a copy of the meeting tonight, it will be on our project website, which is Little Hope Creek, bit.ly/Little Hope Creek. Our project manager, Will Rice's information is attached right here. Best way to reach him is email. Making sure that you guys are also signed up for our text alert notifications. You text Little Hope Creek to the number on the screen right there. As Austin and Will have mentioned, we also do communicate more specifically along streets and certain areas of the neighborhood using door hangers and mailers. So please be on the lookout for those. Those are kind of more of our most immediate ways to get information about current up-to-date happenings or activities that are planned. We are trying to routinely update the Neighborhood and Homeowners Association, and then we also post information about any type of detours or impacts on next door. Next slide, please. And with that, we are going to move into our Q&A section. As I mentioned before, please either drop your questions in the chat or the Q&A box, and I will help go through them and call them out to the project team, and we'll see who can best answer them. So, Will, are you able to join us?
Yeah, I believe so. Can you hear me?
Yes, awesome. All right. Well, did you want to add anything before we go into Q&A?
No, that's it. Thank
Okay,
Austin
awesome.
covered a lot of information that I wanted to cover, so perfect. Good job, Austin.
So our first question is, are we still on target for Mockingbird Field to be cleared by summer 2024? I'm gonna pass that off to you, Will.
Yes. Yes, with a little bit of an asterisk. The big thing about this project is the amount of rock that is in this basin, and the actual, how fast we're going to progress is dependent on how hard that rock is and how much of it there is. And we've done geotech, but it's still a little bit of an unknown that you don't know the full extent of the difficulty of putting pipe in the rock until you've done it and you're doing it. But yeah, we and Austin can verify, but I think we expect to be up to Woodlawn by next summer. Correct, Austin?
That is the plan, and that's a good explanation. Well, it does depend on that rock and how much quantity and what we're seeing that'll dictate our production.
Thank you. The next question is, will roads be repaved, Barkley if needed, and Mockingbird, Terrence at project completion?
Say that one more time.
Yes, it said, will roads be repaved, Barkley if needed, and Mockingbird,
Yes.
Terrence at project completion?
Yes, we will repave that road, correct. And there's already been some repair work, but yeah, further extensive permanent repair work will be done. And then, yeah, the field will be restored to its field-like nature.
Awesome. Anne asked, what will the hours of operation be? And Anne, I'm going to assume you're talking about the hours in which construction activity will occur. So please correct me in the chat if that's not what your intention were. And Austin, do you have an answer for that one?
Yep. Generally, hours of operation during the week is going to be 7 to 5, 7 to 6 potentially. That's our standard operating hours.
And do you have any holiday hours or schedule, Austin, that you would like to share?
Sure. We observe most of the major holidays, like the upcoming one, Thanksgiving. We won't be running the Thursday and Friday, the Thursday of Thanksgiving, the Friday after. Generally, we do a Christmas shutdown where we will, as a company-wide, we do a shutdown between Christmas and New Year's and then go back to work after New Year's Day, so the 2nd. That's another upcoming one. And otherwise, most of just major holidays that we observe.
Thank you, Austin. This also is a question for you. Will the large trucks still be coming in Longwood, Barkley, and Terrence?
Going to assume by large trucks, we're talking deliveries and dump trucks and things like that. Yes, during the construction process, yes.
So there's a little bit of nuance there. Previously Mockingbird was used for laydown and storage of everything. We are going to be in process of moving all that dirt from Mockingbird to a different site. And we will still be storing various materials. So it doesn't make sense to store a piece of pipe that's going in the ground somewhere else. So we'll still store materials, I believe, along the easements. And I believe, Austin, you're probably going to store a few manholes over there at Mockingbird as you install them, correct?
That's correct.
But yeah, the Mockingbird neighbors should see a vastly reduced footprint, and eventually all that dirt will go away as well. And then it will just be a little bit of pipe here and there, and a few manholes here and there.
Thank you, Will and Austin. Next question from Anne is, will specialized trees be cut and donated for other use, such as pecans, black walnut, and oaks? Well, I'm going to pass that one to you.
Yeah, that's not it's not a typical thing that we do. I think for the most part, the clearing and mulching sort of happens at the same time, and the mulch gets used as a little bit of erosion control. Is that correct, Austin?
Yes, the type of clearing we'll do is it generally gets ground up once it's on the ground and turned into mulch. So no, there's no saving of the trees, for lack of a better word, in that case.
We have another question. It says, do you have a map of the trees you plan to remove along section 3A? Austin, I'm going to hand that to you.
Not a specific tree map. We have a set of project plans that will show our LOD. It shows the areas that we'll be clearing, but it's not a specific tree by tree map, as it were. Will, I don't believe you have anything like that either, correct?
Correct, I do not. But I mean, just generically speaking, anything inside the easements, right? We purchased the easements because that's where we need to dig, and so anything inside the easements will become area that we dig in. So trees can't coexist with pipelines, unfortunately. So generically speaking, our alignment is where the trees will be removed.
Anne asked, how can we view which side of the creek the right of way will be? Will?
That's kind of a complicated question. I mean, I can share more specifically certain sections of the project as we, but it's hard to tell you specifically where it is. I mean, the project's going to be where we bought easements, so we won't be across the creek on other people's property where we didn't buy easements. But other than sharing a pretty complicated real estate map with you, I'm not quite sure the best way to answer that question is just yet.
And I'm going to ask Kate if you can go back to the alignment map slide. That just might help with some visuals. Another question, will the rock and soil be moved away from the neighborhood versus being stored on the Mockingbird field? Will, I think you answered this one earlier, but if you can just reiterate the plan to move.
Yes. Yes, we'll be fully demobilized from the Mockingbird site eventually.
Heather asked, when will clearing begin for 3A?
Early to mid-November.
Those are all the questions in the chat. I'm going to make sure I get all the questions in the Q&A. Believe I have asked all of the questions. Are there any other questions? I'm going to give a few minutes if anyone want to type any other questions into the chat. One more question. Are you crossing the creek again?
Not fully sure I understand that question. We've crossed the creek many, many times. So yes, the alignment does cross the creek here and there, depending on what's, what works best for the project design. So a slightly more complicated answer. I mean, I'd be more than willing. If you want to send me an email, I can try to answer more specifically, but it's hard to say yes or no to that.
I do want to reiterate, this meeting will go on the website. So if you guys want to review maybe some of the slides in the meeting after tonight. Feel free to go through. And if you have any other additional questions, Will Rice's information is on the last second to last slide. And feel free to email him. And I'm pretty sure he'll be able to look more into those questions.
Yeah, and I do live in Sedgefield as well, so I'm pretty close to y'all. So I'm also available to just come over and meet you and kind of show you, and we can go out back and point to the creek and point to the old sewer and point to where the new sewer will go. That's helpful.
All right. Carl, would you mind hopping in if you have anything you want to add right here, please?
Sure, Janelle. Good evening, folks. I'm Carl Wilson, Chief Engineer of Charlotte Water for the Operations and Capital Group. I've met some of you all in a prior meeting, but I do want to, there's one question up here that asks about replanting trees. Just to give you all a heads up, that's something that we're in the early stages. I am in the early stages of speaking with our city arborist about. As a matter of fact, we exchanged voicemails this week to try to catch up about any type of mitigations or additional tree planting of when we remove these type trees, or should I say clear easements, such as what we're about to do. So I don't have the specifics, but I wanted to let you know that we understand. Of course, Charlotte is a green city. We try to protect the environment as well as we can, and sometimes that conflicts with providing service. But I wanted to let you know that we did get that question, and we are working on an answer for that. So just to let you know. But other than that, Ajna, I don't have anything else to add. Thank you, everyone, for your patience with this project.
Thank you. We had another question. Michelle would like us to reiterate the timeline for the clearing on the field. I'm assuming you mean Mockingbird.
So yeah, we've got our permit to move the dirt to a different site. So that'll sort of probably start in November, December timeframe. But as I tried to reiterate earlier, that the timing and how fast we can get pipe and manholes in the ground leading away from Mockingbird will really determine how much pipe and manhole we store at Mockingbird. So I can't really give a definitive answer on that. But you should see movement on demobilization from that site in November, December.
Will, this is Michelle. You mean actually like this coming month, not next year, November,
yeah,
December.
Correct. This year, 2023. Correct.
Okay. Because we were told that the clearing of the field would be summer of 24, and then I thought you had said that's the goal timeline, but it would be clear just eventually. So I didn't know what eventually, how many months past the summer it would be.
I want to make sure we're using the same terminology. So clearing usually means for us to cut down trees and make way for a project. But what you're talking about is demobilization.
Yeah, I don't mean
so
that.
all the dirt.
I mean the field to go back to how it was.
You don't want us to
Correct.
cut more trees down. We're not cutting any more trees down at Mockingbird. We're going to remove the dirt to an offsite location, and then you'll see some pipe and manholes stored for the beginning of that phase. And as we get further and further away from Mockingbird, then of course it will make less sense for us to store pipe and manholes there. So the footprint will just sort of gradually shrink. But yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that by maybe January, February timeframe, we would be completely done there. Now that we also have to reestablish, we can't just up and leave. So we'll still quote unquote be there until we can get grass to grow. So.
Are there any other questions in the chat? Katie or Amanda, can you make sure I didn't miss any in the chat or in the Q&A?
We look good.
So again, I want to thank everyone for their time. Just to reiterate, this will go on the website. Please feel free to reach out to Will if you have any questions. He'll be able probably to get a little more detail and in depth with some of you guys' individual questions via written response. And again, I want to thank you guys for your time, and I appreciate you guys joining us for our update on Little Hope Creek in the Phase 3 part of the project. So everyone have a great night.
Yeah.